Hello to all listeners. My name is Justin Crawford, and welcome back to another episode of Totally Real, Not Just a Project for Art History Class, Artcast, the show in which I, your host, Justin Crawford, discuss art and some of its significance. For the piece of this week, I chose the Apollo of Vai, a terracotta statue that is an Etruscan piece made to stand at the front or apex of the Temple of Minerva. The statue is life-size, standing at around 71 inches tall, which I believe is about 5'11". The Apollo of Vai, or Vai, I think it's Vai, is made from painted terracotta clay and depicts the Etruscan god Apullu. The piece has a solid stance with its right foot forward and left foot back, suggesting a sense of motion, as if it were walking forward. Both legs have very defined muscles, showing the tension in the calf for both. The leg at rest and for both the leg in rest and the leg in motion. It shows the weight of the body on the left leg, although that isn't where the weight truly lies. To support the weight of the piece itself, there's a decorated base that runs from ground level of the piece and up between the legs and connecting around the thigh region of the statue. It is also made from terracotta, similar to the rest of the statue. The lines on the base resemble a harp shape. It has an S and a backwards S curve that connect at the bottom, which kind of resembles a lyre, which I believe is an old harp. In the space between the S, there are curved horizontal lines that repeat in a pattern in a sort of leaf shape. But over time, the statue has lost both of its arms, which does reveal that the statue is hollow. But from what remains of the shoulder and defined biceps suggests that the right arm is raised to be about chest level, looking as if he is in mid-message or proclamation, with the left arm seeming as if it was at rest, or at least not as raised as the right arm. Apollo is wearing a loose tunic and short cloak, which is created with a raised level in the terracotta to create a form of cloth texture. Although appearing loose, it is still tight enough to show the pectoral muscle, a small indentation for the nipple, and his genitalia. The head is to scale with the body, which is average for these Etruscan statue pieces, but both have very large painted eyes. It has a 2-scale nose that leads up the arch of his nose to the eyebrows, and the smile itself is a lot more defined than typical archaic smiles. It's just a little happier. It almost shows a little more emotion. The hair of the statue is made from a pattern that resembles rope, like a wrapped around pattern, but I believe this is to signify a braid, with hair that runs down his neck and over his shoulders. But to focus on the piece itself, we kind of have to look at some of the history of where it was. So the Etruscan civilization began around 900 BCE, about 300 years before about 300 years before the initial construction of the Temple of Vai. Recognized today as an early Italian state, the Etruscan civilization existed in regions of modern-day Tuscany and western Umbria. At its peak, the Etruscan civilization was as influential culturally as the contemporary Greek societies to the east. The influence of the Etruscans were especially important due to the influence they had on later society in the region, as evidence suggests that it was the Etruscans who taught the Romans the alphabet and numerals, along with many elements of architecture, art, religion, and dress. The influence on the later Romans indicates the importance of such statues and temples as the Apollo of Vai. Another important factor in the history of Apollo is the role of the temple and the terracotta statues, as the first Etruscan stone temple appears in Vai around 600 BCE. Prior to this time, the temples were made simply on designated land, mainly made out of wood and mud brick, which does not really stand the test of time. However, the stone structures led to a more significant and lasting structure in the region. Compared to the later Roman and even some Greek temples, the use of softer stones rather than marble temples of the contemporary indicates both the stronger lasting nature of the temples, but also the relative skill necessary for the people that were actually shaping these statues. Apollo, and here's just some contextual history about Apollo himself. Apollo is merely one of the set of Greek mythological gods that are presented on the roof of the temple, known through historical records from such contemporary writers as Pliny the Great. Apollo was a Greek god, but his worship was common throughout the region at the time. That's why in the beginning I referred to him as Apullu instead of Apollo, because the Etruscans knew him as Apollo, but it changed. One well-known story associated with Apollo is that of Hercules, or Heracles in Greek, the hero who was tasked with 12 labors. On the top of the Vi temple, Apollo was directly facing and reaching out to the counterpart, and his counterpart may have been the less well-preserved figure of Hercules. Indications from the Heracles statue help to understand the role of Apollo in this place. For example, below the figure of Heracles is a golden animal, which is golden hind from the Greek narrative of Heracles. The animal was stolen from Apollo's sister, which then led the god to be angered and was the origin of the 12 labors for Heracles that eventually defined him to be incredibly powerful. This piece holds significance for the city-state, or as said in the Vita e Azet by, I think this one was from my Britannia source that I read from. They said, another historical approach has been to see the development of sanctuaries as an obvious component of an emerging city-state, which just shows that over time they were building these beautiful temples all over, even in the ones that weren't able to withstand the test of time. It shows this rising, emerging city-state that goes on to influence not just the Greeks, but others as well. That's all the time I have for today. I hope you viewers come back next week. You'll find at the bottom of my pages the sources as well as the image itself with an image citation in case you want to look at it yourself. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.